All right, guys, we are on the next podcast episode here, and I'm excited to have Daniel Gomez on board today. He's going to bring the fire, and if you haven't heard him talk, get ready. If you haven't met him before, get ready. He's a fireball. Just in any person's life, when you hear him talk, you're like, man, this guy is on fire. You know, what is he drinking today? You know. But let me do a proper introduction. This is Daniel Gomez. He's an award-winning keynote speaker, business coach, executive coach, corporate trainer. He is Podcast of the Year recipient. Daniel speaks and coaches at events all over the world. His passion is to elevate businesses, entrepreneurs to achieve their true potential through training and coaching programs. Daniel has empowered his clients to build epic success in their personal and professional lives. He is an international best-selling author of You Were Born to Fly, a book written to inspire and give people the high performance habits and confidence needed to be the leaders in their own destiny. Amen. And then Daniel's high energy, which he is, an ability to unlock the untapped potential people have made him a highly sought out speaker and trainer for top organizations, including the Air Force. Hey, aim high. He was honored with the best of 2019-2020 awards for his training and confidence coaching. He and his wife, Mary Gomez, believe in giving back, supporting women whose lives have been impacted by breast cancer through their nonprofit organization, the Maury Strong Foundation. Daniel is a true professional and easy to work with. Hey, Daniel, thank you for coming on, brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Woo! Daniel Gomez and Joe in the house.
Yeah.
Yes, man. I'll tell you what, Joe, I was listening to you introduce me, and I was like, who is this guy, Daniel Gomez? But you know what? Above all, Daniel Gomez. This goes out to Joe right here. We're going to give Joe a big round of applause right here. Woo! Thank you for having me on your show, Joe. I'm excited to be here today, man. Let me tell you. But the one thing that my bio doesn't say is Daniel Gomez loves people. Daniel Gomez knows what it's like to be without, and Daniel Gomez surfs from the heart, because when you surf from the heart, you can't go wrong, Joe. And I can tell you, I think just really listening to all the accolades I have, it doesn't mean anything if you don't do it with heart. And I had to learn that the hard way, but by the grace of God, I learned it.
Oh, I get it, brother. I get it. And I know we were going to be talking about leading with the heart. And, and it reminds me, just when you said that, reminds me of the scripture that says, if I have love, I have nothing. You can do all these things in the world, but if you don't do it with love, you're just like a hollow brass cymbal, out of tune, out of sync with life. And you know what? But Daniel, man, you're on fire. I see you speak. I've been to one of your conferences, and you get up there and you light it up. And look, hey, he's just not screaming just for this show, okay? When he gets out there and talks, he's yelling and hollering, getting people pumped up because he's excited about bringing life into people, brother. I mean, and how you said you learned this. How we're talking about leading with your heart. How did you learn this, man? How did you learn to lead with heart, brother?
I think, just growing up here in San Antonio, on the south side of San Antonio, we weren't given much. We weren't given much of anything. We were just given an opportunity to really be on food stamps and be the status quo. And guess what? That's what it is. You grew up there, and, not that it's a bad place. I love it. I learned a lot of great lessons growing up in San Antonio, especially on the south side of San Antonio. It taught me heart. It taught me that, guess what? It doesn't matter where you start. It's where you end up in life. And so many of us, we think that because we grew up on the west side, we grew up on the east side, we grew up on the south side, we grew up in the Arizona Apache Corps, that's our definition of who we are. And it is our environment for a season. But once I learned the hack that, man, if you can change your environment, you can change anything. And, one thing that we talked about is just the military, right? United States Air Force. I spoke to United States officers here, and it was a great training, but you yourself military, and as you go in as a trainee, basic training, whether you're male or female, you don't come out the same. Why? Because your environment changes. You're put in an environment where you have leadership that tells you, guess what? That lower standard of living is not going to be tolerated. And it's not. Think about it. Think about how many people that leave their homes from Kentucky, Texas, tough, right? The tough does the tough, and then they get to the basic training, and they're like, "Mom, Dad, I want to go home." Right? It checks you real quick because now they got accountability, and I think leadership just starts. The number one rule of leadership is accountability, and really having that accountability, but not from a butthead standpoint, but from just, hey man, I'm gonna give you some love, and sometimes it's gonna be gentle, right? Because love is gentle, love is kind, but love is also stern because God is sovereign. And I think so many times when you fall into that category of leadership, it's the accountability part that we forget sometimes, because I think we assume that people know stuff because we assume we know it, that they should know it, but we forget that the environment they grew up in is different from ours. So it's so much stuff. But I can say that one thing I learned just growing up in San Antonio in the South Side was just grit. You had to learn how to grit, how to hustle, how to kind of move, and nothing comes easy. I remember eating cereal, and guess what? Towards the end of the month, you have water in that cereal, and it sucks. I mean, it does, but it's part of what reality is. And as a leader of yourself, you're like, okay, are you gonna accept that as your status quo, or are you gonna do something better about it? And I chose, I think just one day I remember lying about going to Fuddruckers about a hamburger. And so why am I lying about saying that I've been to Fuddruckers? But you're in seventh grade. You don't know really, but you know. But I think it just, you make a decision internally that I want to make something better of myself. And we all go through that valley where we know we drink too much, or we do something that we shouldn't do to say, but it's just, you experiment and you realize God says, that's not for you, man. Come on, let's go.
So that is so good.
Some get stuck there, but the thing is, you gotta be stronger than the temptation sometimes, which isn't easy as a leader, right? You can't fall into that temptation, but many times it's just there. But I can tell you that in those struggles, I've learned a lot of lessons, Joe.
Man, I love what you said. It doesn't matter where you start, is where you end up. And through leadership, we got to understand that as well. And this is what I've learned, all right? Being a leader, and like you said, we got to look at people where they're at and stuff like that. And just because you're at a place where you have understanding as a leader and you're guiding and directing people, you can't assume that they understand what you're talking about. They can't assume that they know what you know. And having that heart and having that leadership mentality that leads with the heart, we understand, we have empathy and say, look, all right, they may be doing something wrong, something they don't like. I don't like that they're doing, or they're going in the wrong direction where I know that they're not supposed to go in. I need to lead them with the heart, to lead them out of that place that they're going into. Like, understanding that people where they're at in whatever station in life, we talked about that earlier before we started doing the recording, that there's minorities, right? Minority is a designation for a percentage of a population. But sometimes people internalize that word minority to put minority as their label. Yes. And for us, you and I both know as leaders that when we talk to the people that are similar like we are, we're telling them, look, you could do better. You can get out there. We're not coming at a place to tell them this, to down where they're at, to say, look, man, you're less than. We're saying, look, it doesn't matter where you start. You have dreams and you have aspirations. And Daniel Gomez wants to inspire you that you can go for more. If you have that dream in your heart, you can go to the next level.
Yeah.
And I want to show you, I'm not trying to put you down, not to flout my success or whatever the case may be. It's like, hey, I was once there. And if I can get to where I'm at, you can get there too. It just takes that mindset change that leaders like to do.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that I want to say is you definitely need to, when you lead yourself, that's where the true transformation comes. You got to lead yourself and make the decision. I think one of the main things that I had to learn for myself is, as you talked about minority, is so many times we don't realize that that's the label we embody, and then we play the victim in that subconsciously. And what I mean by that is 95% of what we do, how we do it, is habits. And where do we get that habits from? We get it from our self-image. We get it from the insecurities that we have when we grew up. And then those insecurities, we hang around with other people that have insecurities. And guess what? they try to put their insecurities on us, and they're like, well, man, Joe has this big idea. I'm going to be a motivational keynote speaker, and then Joe shares his vision with his friends from work or wherever it is, and he says, man, it's not Joe's insecurity, but his friend goes, man, you're crazy, dude. You're making good money here. You're making 40, 50,000, and we're lied to believe that if we make 50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, that it's good money. And don't get me wrong. I know the demographically in San Antonio, average household income is $2,500 a month, which isn't much at all.
Mm.
But I say this because 50,000, 60,000, is it really a lot of money pretending compared to what? It really isn't. And I don't say that with disrespect, but I just say that when you realize that there's another level of thinking that the top 2% people think in the world compared to how we're trained to believe, right? Because we're back in the day, we're just going to talk about back in the medieval times, leadership decided that they didn't want the common man to take over because they were worried about it. It's real talk. And the thing is, they use religion as their tool to say, hey, guess what? To be religious, to be godly is to be poor, to be meek is to be poor, to be a follower of God's to be poor, to be a follower is to be poor, to be a follower of Jesus. And they brainwashed us that way. And that's why 90% of the people don't even compare to what the wealth of the top 2% have. True fact. Think about it, right? We're sent to school, and school is great. I'm not knocking school. Then we go to college. School is great. But where in these school systems do they talk about money? Do they talk about social behavior? Do they tell you that, guess what? You have the power to shift your mindset. They give you the knowledge that you need to an extent, but they don't really give you the financial wisdom of what it takes to really be successful and prosper. They train us since we were little kids that you're going to stand in line, you're going to eat when I tell you to eat, you're going to do what I tell you to do. And then when you go to the next level, guess what? When you go to college, guess what? You're going to follow the schedule I give you. This is what it's on. Then you go to work. You're going to work the rest of your life from 9 to 5. At the end of the day, I'm going to give you a gold watch when you retire. And we accept that. We accept that, which is sad. And then some of us that don't go to college, we go to the military, which the military is great. It does provide opportunity. But guess what? Now they tell you, well, now you got to respect somebody that really, I'm going to be real here, right? Because I've met a lot of people, their leadership stinks. But because the fact that they say, well, this is a saying that they say, you don't respect the person, but respect the rank. But what if he's a bad leader? I mean, what if his heart is not in it, right? What if he has issues and he takes that on? I've seen it. They take it out on their platoon, on the people that they serve.
Mm-hmm.
So I say this because there's so much, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for, is organization to keep us to where we're controlled, to say our thinking is controlled. And now what I love about the world is we have an open opportunity to open up our minds to really study and gravitate. But the thing is that not everybody has access to YouTube. Everybody has access to the same information, but not many people believe it because it's not familiar to them. And since it's unfamiliar to them, they always gravitate to what's familiar. And that's the one thing in leadership I want to say today is, to be a great leader, you have to get familiar with the unfamiliar. You have to get familiar with the unfamiliar, because that's where leadership begins. Anybody can lead on a paved road, but what are you going to do when the road ends?
Wow. That is so good. That is so good. To get familiar with the unfamiliar. And it takes a bold step of faith to do that.
Yes.
To step out there. And look, hey, before I started doing my podcasting, before I started doing my coaching, I was in the military and I was used to the structure. I was used to the regiment. But when I got out, I was smacked in the face with, what am I going to do now? And a lot of times that happens. You go through school, like you said, they tell you where to go. They tell you what time you need to be there. You have to be at the bus stop. You have to eat lunch, not go home. Here's your homework. But when you get out, how do you lead your life? And that's what I love so much about coaching. I love that Daniel's out there teaching people how to live their life and live it in an abundance to inspire them to go to the next level. And that's what I do too. But I brought Daniel on because look, there's some people that won't be attracted to how I coach. There's gonna be some people that are attracted to the way Daniel coaches. I like it. He's on fire. He'll kick you in the butt. in a good way, in a good way, you know, in a loving way. We both have the same methodology. We just do it differently. And he gets on fire. He wants you to see success. I get on fire. I get success in a different way, you know, but you need to get out there and get with the unfamiliar to be successful in life. Those people complain, you know, that and you hear it. They complain about the 2%ers. Oh yeah. Look, what are they doing that makes them the 2%? What are they doing? They make themselves uncomfortable by doing those things that other people won't do. Period.
And I gotta think. I think just in leadership, sometimes we have a scarcity mindset that. So someone saying, "Okay, Joe, Daniel, I hear you talking about what you right, the word abundance, the word this, like, what is it? What I'm gonna give you some simple exercises you can take away today to lead your life in a new area. A good example is yesterday. Like we live in San Antonio. We live in a beautiful city. When is the last time you've gone to the Hemisphere Tower and had lunch in the tower? When is the last time you've experienced that? And I can tell you that almost 90% of San Antonian people have never eaten lunch at the tower. I can guarantee it because I was one of them for many years, even though I had, right. But it's just giving yourself that experience when you're up there. You know, we've been up there several times now having lunch lately this last year, but you get up there and you see the whole city of San Antonio. But this is the thing that I want you to get from that. You got to lead yourself to see from a higher altitude. When we were up there having lunch on Sunday, Joe, we were out there. You see what seems so far away on the highway. Like I told my wife, look, there's the Joe Freeman Coliseum. I said, how Michael Hayes used to say, that's the Joe and Harry Freeman Coliseum, Mama's Taco Place in the wrestling days, right? But we were just laughing about it. But look at how close it is to downtown. But yet it seems so far when we drive because we're at the ground level. But when you're at the higher altitude of thinking and elevation of perspective, the Alamo Dome's right next to us. There's the Joe and Harry Coliseum. Look, there's medical center right there. Like you see it. And San Antonio, all of a sudden, which seems humongous, it's like it's right here within this view right here, 4 inches. Because that perspective, your altitude is higher, your thinking is higher. So you got to go out there and put yourself in situations where you've never been. In our own city, go to the Riverwalk and go experience our Riverwalk. Go out there and have a nice lunch and splurge that. I'm not saying to be selfish but something happens when and this is what I want to share is you, in leadership you got to shift and get out of that Motel 6 mentality. We think that cheaper is always better and that we're conditioned Motel 6 discount savings. No. And this is something that I had to definitely work out of and expand my capacity to say, well, why not have a nice lunch and go to the tower and spend $100? Why not? Why not go instead of saying a Motel 6 and looking for every econo budget? Why not go stay at the Hilton or the Marriott? Why not? Because we're not used to it, right? It's unfamiliar to many people. We're familiar to going to these little small Motel 6s, but once you put yourself in there, you're like, wow, you put yourself in a different environment. And when something happens, when you start to put yourself in that different environment, guess what? Now, as your elevation raises in thinking, now your income starts to raise because as your thinking raises, everything else around you raises. Because the way you do something, Joe, is the way you do everything.
That is so true. That is so true. And to add on to what you were saying earlier, when we elevate our thinking, people can go two ways with that. They could say, oh, I'll never go up there. It costs too much.
Yes.
And then the other way to think about it is, if I go up there, how can I afford it? How can I get there to achieve that, to see that, to experience that? How can I? It's just a shift in our wording and how we think we can do things. If you have a scarcity mindset, you're going to think, I can't afford it. But if you have a mindset that says it is possible, you're going to ask the other question, which is, how can I? How can I achieve? And there's nothing wrong. And I know where you're going with this, because we think on the same lines. Why not? Why not? Why not go up there? Do you think you don't deserve it? Do you think you're not worthy of it? Those people that sit up there in that tower are the same people just like you and I. They just went about getting there on a different path. They maybe chose a different job, a different career path. They said, look, I am tired of being where I'm at right now. How can I get there? And it's not like you're thinking you're better than anybody else. It's just, look, where is your standard of living? How do you want to inspire others? Where do you want your children to be 10 years from now? You know what? If man, it's a simple mindset. Daniel, please give us a little bit more tips. How can they get out of that mindset to the mindset to where they look, if they can do it, I can do it?
Well, like I said, I think it's just putting yourself in that environment. Really, when you're going on vacation, when you're doing something, don't do it because somebody else is doing it, because it's a desire of your heart to go and experience these new, right? The main thing is this, is you have to give your mind new experiences. You have to give your mind new experiences on a consistent basis, because if not, it's conditioned and it gets familiar with what's around you, and it programs itself subconsciously. It just knows how to think, how to react. And when you put it in an environment that it's not familiar with, it's like, hey, I like this experience, right? So you experience a nicer restaurant, you experience staying at a nicer hotel, maybe a level up what you normally would. And as you continue to do that, that's another great thing to do. Another thing to do is definitely when you go to lunch, so many times we go to lunch and we don't eat what we want. We buy what the lunch special is. No, like buy what you want. They just really, right? Like that starts to break that mindset of no, I'm going to eat what I want to eat. And right, I'm not saying this from a selfish standpoint. I'm saying that because you work hard, you do what you do, you take care of your customers, you take care of your employees. So hey, if you want to spend an extra, think about this. How many times have we gone to lunch and you see somebody that buys something that they don't want? It's only like, instead of it being $12.99, it's $10.99, and because it's $2 cheaper, they go with that less expensive lunch. It's silly, but this is the way we lead ourselves when it comes to our scarcity mindset, right? And another great example is whether gas is $2.54 or $2.58, it's not going to make a big difference. I mean, let's be real. I mean, it is, right? It's not going to make a big difference. So why not? To me, my time is worth more than driving all over San Antonio looking for that 4 cents cheaper. But people don't think that way. We don't think that way. To me, it's like, heck, like a good example is, and this is something that, right? It's progression. It's all the journey of becoming that leader you were born to be. It's all a journey of becoming. And like we went to Star Furniture after we had lunch and we were there, and the lady goes, well, do you want to have it delivered, or do you want to? Well, how much is it for delivery? She goes, well, it's $139. I said, you know what? Deliver it. The old Daniel would have said, I think I'll pick it up, or I would have, I'm being honest, right? 10 years ago, I would have done that. But I just said, to me, my hourly rate is a lot higher than that. $139, deliver it. I don't got time to come over here, waste an hour to come pick it up, waste an hour to go back over there. And not that I'm better, but it's not a wise use of my time. And you got to realize when you raise your level of thinking as a leader, you realize that you value your time more. What could I be doing, right? I could be on Joe's podcast pouring out value. To me, this is worth $1,000. Why wouldn't I want to share my voice with somebody? And hey, if I can change one life, great. I'll pay somebody $139. They can drop it off. And not only that, I don't really want to do manual labor. So it saves me two things. But we don't think that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Guys, if you don't get it right now, Daniel's kind of coaching you right now. This is coaching. He's bringing value to you guys, because we have a mindset issue in this country. There are so many people living in poverty right now, and there's a lot of extenuating circumstances. But if there's people, I know people right now that were homeless, basically living in their car. And until they said, I'm tired of this. My children are sleeping in my car with me. And they said, I'm going to lead myself. They got a coach, right? They really couldn't afford it. But now they're making six figures. Okay, six figures, over 300,000 a year, going upwards every year now because they made a decision to get out of the poverty mindset. Homeless to over six figures. Yeah. That's why Daniel and I are talking to you guys about it. We're not just saying it to say it. This works. And all it takes is one decision to elevate your thinking, like Daniel's talking about.
Yeah, people say they can't afford it, Joe, but it's like you can't afford not to. You can't afford not to do it, right? I can't afford it. You can't afford not to do it, right? If you're here in the same position that you were in last year, what's changed? Nothing. What needs to change? You, me, somebody listening and watching this video. You need to change. You're the variable. You're the X factor. You're the variable of why your life is not where you're at, and until you take ownership and responsibility of that of your own life and lead yourself, then nothing's going to change. And it could start something as simple as buying my book on Amazon, right? You Were Born to Fly. It's going to give you some great ideas. And is it going to give you the path to success? Maybe, because maybe one idea is going to shift your thinking, like, wow, because sometimes you think you know it all and you really don't know it all. Or you have my mentality, right? I call this a Southside mentality. You're like, well, screw it. I don't need it, right? Screw it. Forget them. I would say it another way when I was younger, but that's the mentality you say, like, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, apparently they do, and you don't, because you're still stuck here in this $10 $1 job working construction, or you're still nothing's changed. It's time you stop tolerating what you hate. It's time you stop tolerating that. And you can either read a book, you can listen to Joe's podcast, but listen to it and get a notepad and take notes down, right? Write down the stuff that you're listening to, because when you write it down subconsciously, and the more and more you do it repeatedly, you're going to notice, wow, I'm changing, right? And then there's going to come up where you're going to be like, maybe I do need a coach, because you're going to need for that deeper stuff. Guess what? You're going to need a coach. The books and the podcast are going to take you to a certain level, but there comes a point where you're going to have to go even deeper, because I had a lot of junk, Joe, that I didn't even realize I had, but I had to trust the people around me that I wanted to be led to a higher level. And you got to trust yourself to be vulnerable sometimes, because in that level of success, it's like sometimes you need that outside perspective to see in and see what's going on, because you don't see it. I don't see it. No one sees it. We all have blind spots.
Yeah, and that's what's important about coaching. Goodness gracious. They see your blind spots. They see, hey, look, man, you need to tweak this. I understand you saying this and this and this and this, but what about this? And then they're going to challenge you. Look, I've been challenged by coaches about how I talk, about my mentality, what I'm saying to myself. And that's what's important. That's what we're talking about here. Like the running theme is, what are you saying to yourself? And if you're not catching it, you're going to stick it in that same mentality. They don't know what they're talking about. And again, he's like, I'm gonna go back to that $10 an hour work. It takes about the taxes that come out of that is like you're only with that maybe $7 an hour after they take all the taxes out, and then you're wondering why you're struggling in life. We don't want you to struggle in life. That's why Daniel has his coaching. That's why he speaks. That's why he has his coaching programs. And he's relentless. He wouldn't be doing this if he didn't care. That's why we're going back to leading with your heart. If he didn't care about your success, he wouldn't be doing this. He'd just be sitting back, enjoying life. It's like, look at those fools out there, but he doesn't. And congratulations, a happy anniversary. As
Thank you.
I know you celebrated anniversary the other day.
Yeah,
that's super awesome.
And we all go through that. And I don't want to sit here and think like I had it all together. Even myself, Joe, like I have to challenge myself and lead myself those days that you don't feel like doing it. Those days that you're like, well, I've had a good month. I've had a good year. Like I could rest now. We already surpassed last year, and it's easy to do that. But when you think about the people out there that need help, like really, really that need you, that's what drives me when I don't want to get up. That's what drives me when it's like, man, it's like, but it's like, no, you have to think. You said something earlier that was huge, right? It's not about us. It's about what's the legacy you're leaving for your family? What's the legacy you're leaving for your kids? What's the legacy that you're leaving for the world to see? Because it's not about you. It's not about me. It's not about Dan. It's not about Joe. It's about who can we impact that's going to listen to Joe's podcast today, that's going to be here on this leadership podcast. And if they can take away one thing, guess what? Maybe it's going to change their life and say, wow, because you're listening to this podcast for a reason. And that's what it's about. Because I've been there. I've been on the other side where that shame and that guilt falls in as a leader. And you're like, you made a mistake. You shouldn't have done certain things. You just know it. But then as Hispanic men, we don't forgive ourselves. And then our solution for that is, hey, let's go have a beer, or hey, let's go have a drink. And then next thing you know, that's kind of like the antidote, right? That's the medicine you use to fill that void. And then you happen to make another mistake, and then guess what? Well, let's go have another beer. And then it's a vicious cycle. And then not until one day you say, great, right? Because we're not taught as men to deal with our emotions. We're taught to suppress them and shut up, get up. Tough, real men don't cry, right? Stop being weak. Come on. Right? Come on, wussy. Stop being, let's go. Come on, soldier, let's go. It's like, no, like, let's face it. When I trained in the United States Air Force, when after just speaking and you see the tears coming down men and women, it's because why? Not just the military, but even SAPD and all police departments, they're not allowed to show their emotions, and they suppress these things, and that crap turns into anger, resentment, envy, and then they end up just with arthritis or whatever comes their way because they don't release that toxins and the stress level and the emotions within themselves.
Wow. Look, this is about leadership. You know, you might be talking about, what does this got to do with it? It has everything to do with leadership. This has to do with your self-leadership. And I don't want to gloss over the fact about environment, because you talked about environment. Environment is huge, especially when it comes to leadership. And can you talk about a little bit about what you mean about changing your environment? Because people they think about, oh, well, you know, it's instead of sleeping in a doghouse when I get in trouble with my wife. I mean, what are you talking about here, Daniel?
Well, I'll make it fun, Joe. Right? I'll make it fun, right? So in my book, I talk about your proximity, your associations, but I'm going to make it even funner, right? I'm going to say, who's in your playground? Let's go back to the kid in us. Who's playing on your seesaw? Who's playing on your merry-go-round? Who's on your swing right now? Who's playing with you right now in your playground that doesn't belong there? Who is there criticizing everything you do, right? There's 5 people in your playground. In life, we have our closest associations, our closest proximity people impact us, right? We become the sum of the 5 that we hang around with the most. So who are the 5 that are closest to you in your playground? It could be a tia, a tío, your primo, your prima, a friend, your homie, however you want to say it. But who are you playing basketball with? Who's in your playground? And ask yourself, are these 5 people the person that I want to become when I grow up? Are these 5 people helping me, or are they hindering me? And maybe there's some good ones in there, right? But who's the one? There's always one. There's always one that no matter what you say, they criticize you, or, oh man, you just like, right? Or you buy that new car, that new truck, and they say, it must be nice, right? So what are they really saying? They're really saying they're being cynical about it, because it's like they don't believe it for themselves. It goes back to their insecurities, or they're trying to rub off their insecurities on you. So if you have somebody that says must be nice, oh man, like why you want to be? That's a dumb idea. Or when they criticize what you're doing, all they're doing is they're criticizing because they can't duplicate it. That's the person you need to push out of the circle and allow room for the new, right? So in your environment, push those people to the outer circle and make room for the new relationships, right? Like Joe, I would have never met you, but it's in serious talk, right? You make room for the new, and people come into your life. So ask yourself, the 5 people that I hang around with the most, and this is the hard part. It might even be a cousin or somebody that's there. But if you're, think about it this way, if you're already on your second marriage, you've been divorced, and your wife already told you, look, man, like this is your warning, but you're always with your primo that's out drinking, and it's your primo the one that's taking you out to the clubs. Who do you need to let go of, right? You need to start hanging out with that primo. It's simple as that, but it's as simple, but it's as hard as that because we already have those habits, but you got to break those bad habits and you got to find out, right? Who's in my playground? I don't belong there. So that's the main thing you got to change in your physical environment is get rid of those people. And then the second thing I would say is this is in your mental environment. Are you feeding yourself a book, right? A month? Are you feeding yourself a book? Are you listening to podcasts like this? And what are you watching? Are you watching educational videos on YouTube? Right? And what do I need to stop watching for my mental environment? Well, you definitely need to stop watching the damn news, right? You got to stop watching the news.
Yeah, that's a killer.
And then the next thing is you have to stop binge watching on Netflix. You know, my son came home and it was during the holidays last Christmas, and he was just like, yeah, my sales are down, Dad. I'm like, dude, like, okay. And I was like, I felt bad for him. He's my son. He was kind of like, yeah, I love you, son. So it was, I didn't make a big deal about it. But he was home for a week, and I just noticed, like, they didn't say nothing the first day. I'm like, well, dude, look, that's why your sales are down. It's like, well, what are you talking about? And I go, dude, look at the crap you're watching. Like, you're literally spending 8 hours a day adding no value to yourself. It's actually toxic. It's right. It's actually contaminating your thinking. No, it's not. I'm like, think about it. And he got mad. He was mad at me. He left. He was mad. I said, why don't you waste that time listening to a podcast having to do with sales? If you don't want to listen to mine isn't always on sales, but why don't you go listen to one that has a sales podcast and see if it helps you? He was mad. He didn't tell me nothing. He called me like a week and a half later, Dad, you know what? You were right. But as a leader, you got to give him that tough love sometimes and ever since then, he'll listen to a sales podcast, more than what he usually has in the past 2 or 3 years. This past year, but it's hope to guess what? He went from listening to that podcast, the information he was taking in, subconsciously he was retaining it, and then guess what? Started making another $4,000 a month just on his part-time gig.
Look at that. That's gold. Look, I'm gonna take a note of this because Daniel just gave us something real good. If you want to elevate your thinking, and not just say, oh, I'm just gonna read books. Right? It's very specific. If you have a goal to achieve something like his son wasn't making sales, but he was listening to Netflix, right? Or watching Netflix or whatever. But he's like, look, he did a coaching thing with his son because he cared enough about his son. Say, look, man, why don't you listen to something about sales that'll elevate your thinking about the goal that you're wanting to achieve? Be specific about it. Hey, look, if you want to learn about how to rock climb or climb Mount Kilimanjaro, you're not going to be reading books about walking through the desert. All right, you're going to be reading books about people that have scaled Mount Kilimanjaro successfully and learn how they did it and how they did it successfully instead of dying on the side of the mountain or getting jacked up by gorillas or whatever. Anyway, just a random thing about gorillas. But it's very specific. And with having a coach like Daniel in his programs, he's going to tell you, look, dude, you want to be successful in this area. Why are you doing this over here? And he's going to tell you in love, because we're talking about leadership with heart. Leadership with heart will tell you, look, man, you have this goal in mind to do B. Why are you doing X? Let's focus on B and what will get to B so you can be successful in life. And that's what that little shift in thinking is. Guys, if you have a dream of owning your own business, why are you watching Netflix? And there's nothing wrong with Netflix, all right? My wife and I, we set aside time to watch the shows that we like to watch, but we don't sit there and binge watch it for 8 hours a day. We're like, all right, we're set aside this time right now. Watch one of our shows. Great. Daniel's not saying to go celibate and watch, but he's saying, look, guys, you want to achieve something in life? I'm gonna help you focus on that. And you know what? When you focus on that and you listen to someone like Daniel, you're gonna get the results. You're gonna get the results because he knows those blind spots. He's been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, And he's at where he's at because he's learned the hard way. And he doesn't want you to learn the hard way. He wants you to expedite success. And that's what it's all about. That's what coaching is. Yeah. We expedite success for people who are willing to learn and listen. But Daniel, before we go, where can they find you? I know we're going to put it in the description below, but where can they find you if they want to say, look, I need to get a hold of Daniel right now?
Yeah. So text the word confident to 26786. That's confident with a T to the text confident to 26786. They can go right now to danielgomezglobal.com. That's danielgomezglobal.com. Do my free assessment there is for entrepreneurship, but really it's about life and entrepreneurship because it's all one and the same. Because if your business is not good, you're the problem. Either way, it fixes you. So do the free assessment there at danielgomezglobal.com. And that's my podcast in the back, the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show. Subscribe to our show. It's on iTunes podcast, and it's also on Spotify and iHeart all over the world. And definitely our brand is Daniel Gomez Inspires. You can follow us on IG, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and also on Twitter and Facebook. So we would love for you to connect with us here. And, the main thing I want to say is this, Joe, is thank you for having me. I love you and I respect you. And we're always growing. And I want you to think about this, ladies and gentlemen. If God can take mold and turn stinky old mold and turn it into penicillin that's good for your body, if you can do that with mold, what can he not do in your life if you invite him into your life? It's time you stop trying to live life on your own and invite him into your life. And if you need some additional inspiration, go to Amazon. You can get my book, You Were Born to Fly, and it's going to definitely elevate you. And if you're in business, Sticker Shock's going to help you in sales. It's going to make a difference right here. You can get both books on Amazon and are both on Kindle version also. Or you can go to my website, danielgomezglobal.com. You can get the Kindle version there also. But you got to start somewhere, and something is better than nothing. It's not the giant leaps that get us there. It's the little baby steps. Take the baby steps every day, and I promise you can't lose with baby steps.
Amen. Hey, look, guys, you know where to find them. danielgomezglobal.com. Get in touch with him. Check out his books. You won't fail in doing it unless you don't take action. All right. Take action, even if it's 1% to take action, and Daniel will lead you there. He has a true passion and heart. And look, like I said, check him out, danielgomezglobal.com. Go to his podcast, his YouTube channel. It's a win-win situation. Thank you, Daniel, for coming on. I appreciate you, brother. Hey, I love San Antonio. I love being here.
Thank you for having me, man. It was an honor to be on your show. So thank you for having me, my brother. I appreciate you, man.
Hey, take care, and God bless y'all. We'll see you on the next podcast.